I have an admission to make to all of you today. I am a nerd. I'm a real nerd. Any other nerds out there? You would, well, no, I mean, like, I'm a real nerd. Like, I knew I wanted to be an electrical engineer when I was 8 years old. I picked the nerdiest college to go to. I found the nerdiest, biggest, what can I say about my company? I love my company, but 32 years ago, I found a job up in Vermont working for a very big engineering company, and I still have that same job. That company was so nerdy that they even issued me an engineer for a wife, which was pretty good. She's lovely. But I love my company. I love my wife. I love my wife more. But I love my industry. And what I really love is I love science. And I love being able to spark that interest in kids using just normal stuff like steel wool. And I think in the spirit of do try this at home, we're going to do a couple of things like this today. But, you know, I was thinking about having worked in this industry for almost 40 years, 32 years, and then college before, and I was trying to figure out, you know, what would I say about it? And the opportunity came to me a couple of months ago. I was asked to do something really scary, much scarier than this. I was asked to talk at my kids' high school. And you remember being in one of those graduation kind of lectures, and there was some old guy up there going, "When I was your age." I was that old guy now. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna say? Because if you're gonna suck, you can suck here, but not in front of your kids. And I was thinking, well, God, you know, what am I gonna say? And I was really agonizing over it, because I'm kind of a worrier, but I'm also, you know, have fun. And it came to me in a flash that when I looked back over 40 years, what had I learned and what had I wished that somebody had told me more about? And it was about the importance of play. Really play. And I don't mean like going out fishing or playing football or something like that. It's about having a playful spirit in your work. And why do I say that? Because when I look back over 32 years of my career, the times that I actually was the most creative, the most productive, the most influential, and certainly the most happy, was the time I was playing and bringing play into my life. And it's interesting because just last week, I was in our headquarters with the most senior technical peers, and I kind of checked them out. I did a kind of mental checklist, and most of them, not all of them, but most of them had preserved that kind of playful spirit in that. And I kind of look out into my colleagues in the industry and other fields. You know, for me, play means goofing around with science. For you, maybe it's origami or haiku or woodworking or whatever it is. But the people who actually keep that are really, really lucky. And it's hard. It's hard. But why is it important to keep that playful spirit? Because play actually leads to creativity. There's a really good study that I read out of North Dakota State that basically took a couple hundred students and they put them in two rooms. One, they said, okay, do this creative task and we'll measure your output. And the other one, they said, okay, do this creative task and pretend you're a 7-year-old kid. They had about 30% more creative output. And why is that? Because when you're playing, you're in it. You're actually exploring. You're not worrying about the outcome. You're bold. And my 3 boys, Max, Sam, and Gabe, have always been my leaders there. I always stress about some talk I was going to give, and I couldn't come up with an idea. So my son Gabe said, I have a great idea, Dad. So we went down the road. This bridge is about 15 meters above a very shallow river. And he said, this will help your creativity. And I was like, "Grr." So I took a picture of him and then luckily handed my phone to someone else. And there I went. And you know what? I'd like to tell you that I had that great insight when I was on the way down. That's not actually it. That's not how it happened. I didn't think about anything as I was going down. But it did come to me later. But I was like totally blissed out. Now, how do you bring that into your work? Well, sometimes you just got to kind of really be bold. And this happened a couple of months ago. I was in a meeting And let's just say it wasn't going that well. It was a dinner meeting, and the juices just weren't flowing. And I was like, what do I do? Well, I'm a vegetarian, and all these guys are getting this really delicious chicken kind of thing with all these fanfare stuff, and they bring me a plate with carrots and parsnips. And I'm going, oh my God. So I did the only thing I could. It's like pulling the emergency switch. Is I took my laptop cord, and I took 2 of the forks, and I happen to have some wire, and I took that parsnip, said a few prayers, and stuck it on here, and we have 110 volts. Let me just tell you that this pickle is playing the part of the parsnip. Maybe we could lower the lights a little bit. But I will tell you that once the smoke cleared, the conversation got completely different. So not only were we talking about, we were like, okay, and actually this works really well. It works with pickled beets and stuff. In the holidays, you can kind of have this crazy winter thing. Oh my God, that smells really bad. But sometimes you just have to go for it. And it's interesting because, why am I saying this to you? Well, I mean, sure, fun is good, play is good. Because the lesson I have learned, and you probably have too, is that life has a way of kind of wringing that out of you. When you're a kid, play, sure. But, I know in my own company that it's tight times, and we sort of squeeze the fun out of things, and we forget to play. We forget to be creative. We forget to be into that kind of blissed out, bold kind of move. And then, when you squeeze the play out of work, it just becomes work, which is, I guess, why they call it work. And it's really the harder that happens, the more you have to play. And I'm about to tell you something very sad. I had to think about whether I was going to do this or not. But sometimes things just happen that you can't control. And in 2006, my beautiful middle son, Sam, was walking across the street on vacation and was hit by a car. And he died instantly, and his organs went on to save 4 other people. And, his life changed. Those 4 people that he passed on, were able to move on. And we had to move on. And so it was I can't even begin to tell you how that affects your life. When I look back at it now, play was an incredibly important part of our grieving process, and more than our grieving process, our moving forward. You don't move on, but you move forward. And one of the things that we did is that we all came together to make these little stones with his name on it, Sam Stones, and it's at samstones.org. And we first started, we kind of made these out of clay, and we would cook them, and we would give them to our friends, and they would take them places, and then occasionally they would tell us where they put them. Well, people started asking us for them. This was almost 7 years ago. We are still making them, and I think at last count, maybe we have 40,000 of them out there. This is, by the way, a hell of a way to learn PHP, but I actually created an application. Can I give you permission? It's okay to laugh, because life goes on. But these things have ended up in amazing places. And I mean, we only hear about it occasionally where somebody puts them. But each one of these things has stories, and people have done with them, and people have found them, and the crazy things. People have made these out of steel, glass, chocolate, atoms. We actually printed them with atoms. 3D printers. Oh, actually, do I have that one? I have one. Oh. This one actually had gone into space. My friend David actually put this on a rocket. It went 62 miles into space and was fished out of the Atlantic Ocean because it had a radio thing on it. So I think this is play, even at the saddest moment. The harder it gets, the harder you have to play. And, it's kind of hard to change gears and move on, but I am going to move on. So I'm, back in the world, and I'm inventing and doing my day job and everything, but occasionally you just need to get out of your zone, and you need to break with the past. And so one day, I went in, and I love my family, and I went into my beautiful hippie wife, and I said, beautiful hippie wife, how do I get my mojo back? Because as you go away from play, you have to come back in. And she goes, scruffy old husband, how do I know? I'm cooking dinner. Go ask the cosmos. So I said, oh, okay. So I, wait. So I walked out, And I said, okay, Cosmos, what do you have for me? It was snowing. No giant voice. So I kind of went, oh, that didn't work. But the next morning, something very strange happened. I got a call from a Hollywood casting agent who said, do you want to be a scientist on reality TV show? And I heard everything but the reality. Actually, the Dutch invented reality TV, isn't that true? You invented Big Brother? Yeah, I think I'd rather be remembered for wooden shoes and windmills. But so basically, I ended up going out to California, expecting, I went through some trial process, and, they tested me. And the only thing that I ever figured out is that they like me because I have bad hair. That's the only thing. But they met me at the airport, and I was going to, stand there and shake their hands. And instead, they put a blindfold on me, threw me in a rock, asked me questions. Aliens control your thoughts, true or false? It's harder than you think, because if they did control your... But basically, here's what it was. There were 10 strangers, and I don't want to give too much of it away because it is available on Netflix and stuff like this. That happens to be my charming wife. It's the only wife I have, actually, so she's a charming wife. But basically, this is what happened.
Infrastructure breaks down. Chaos reigns.
My Facebook friend.
This is the setting of the colony.
Yeah, take that, Yappy.
The colony is a controlled experiment to see if 10 strangers can rebuild society in the wake of a global catastrophe.
Yeah, whatever. So, it was an amazing experience, especially because I'm one of the more senior technical people at let's just say it's a very stable company. And I was not prepared, but we were 10 people living in, sleeping on the floor in 2 beds, 3 toothbrushes between us, not a lot of water to wash. I'm a vegetarian, remember I mentioned that? My first red meat was rat. Ate a lot of cat food, a lot of dog food, but the main thing was that we were building stuff. It was Discovery Channel, and we had all sorts of stuff around that we could find and kind of build things together. So we spent the hours that we weren't being tormented, et cetera, making things. And it was so great. It was like the Toaster Project. It was so wonderful. We were making stuff. And then, here, just kind of everyday objects that you need after the apocalypse, like a flamethrower. Well, but the interesting thing is, it always had this, don't try this at home. Well, you know what? That is the best way to get somebody to try something. And the cool thing is I was able to watch this out in the blogosphere, in Twitter and stuff like that, and get to say, oh, man, look, I almost fried my eyebrows, whatever. So I was able to watch this and actually and since then have been able to use this to talk to kids a lot. Now, the cool thing about it is it was total playful spirit. And the weird thing is that, part about play is making mistakes. So, for example, we didn't have a lot of water for cleaning, but one day it started raining. This is in LA. And my 9 industrious colleagues ran out to try to catch every raindrop. And I said, I can't tell you what I said because it was reality TV. I went, beep, beep. And I ran out the back and I threw my clothes on the ground. And the rain is pouring down and the stink and dirt is coming off of me. And I turn around and there's a guy with a $100,000 camera. And I'm like, dude, you wouldn't. And he goes, I'd pick up that sheet. So fade forward. I'm back at my work, trying to reestablish life as a senior, serious technical person. And I got a call that I'm supposed to go down to headquarters to talk to the communications people because they wanted to know, tell us about this educational show you were on. So I drove 500 kilometers down there. I went in with the big boss. We were talking for supposed to be 20 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. Okay. I'm driving home, and I'm like, kind of a neurotic guy. So I called one of the other guys that was in there, and I said, how do you think that went? Because, they loved it. It was awesome. They totally can't wait to see it. And I was thinking about the kind of language. It's all beep, beep, beep. He said, don't worry, as long as you kept your clothes on. So a couple of weeks later, I'm there in front of about 160 people. This is after I picked up the sheet. I was pixelated, thank God. But I'm going, oh, my kids are seeing this. My parents are seeing this. Oh my God, my bosses are seeing this. And the next time I saw that communications guy, his only comment was, dude, you should get more sun. And I was like, so you really don't need to worry so much. So Here's an interesting thing, though. I got really tuned into social media and the ability to be able to project stuff out there. And it was pretty amazing to be able to watch how this stuff magnified. And I got the first taste of that. How does this thing work, anyway? This is a little bit of a strange point. I learned how to use social media for play from a 15-year-old neighbor. And he said, hey, John, do you know anything about microwave plasma? And I went, what? He had put a video out on YouTube that basically he was making plasma in a microwave. You ever done this? I'm using steel wool because I couldn't get his experiment to work here, so I'm improvising. So just to that guy Tom in the sky who was the toaster project, I'm about to melt iron in a microwave. Isn't that stranger than fact? But let's see if we can get this to work. Let's see if that... Isn't that just gorgeous? I would suggest you do it in somebody else's microwave. Now, but there is a whole subculture of bad microwave tricks. I mean, people putting everything from, well, don't put live animals, but there's, this is a way of actually engaging your scientific mind and having fun. An interesting story, or at least I think it's interesting, is about this headband. So this is actually a funny thing about how things can actually be magnified on the internet and how your play can go out and affect other people. Several years ago, 2007, I was in Shanghai, and I saw on a building, these kind of really garish lights that were going like this. So I made the only decision I could. I said, I need to make a hat out of that. So I got some of this stuff, and I went back to my lab, and I was oscilloscoping and stuff, and I figured out about 80% of it. But I wasn't smart enough to figure out some of the cool kind of fades. So I put it out on the internet. I put it out on one of these weird techie blogs, and a kid who was half my age, twice as smart, figured that out. He made the code for something called the Arduino. That went out. A woman in New York picked that up and had no idea who I was, but she did manage to take the picture of my son and put it on her webpage, and I'm really delighted about it, and I'm using it in this. Now, a strange kind of coincidence is the reason I'm here with you today has to do with this. I started experimenting with microcontrollers. At my work, I started seeing something about the Internet of Things, and I got involved in a project with TEDxDelft called the Digital Delta, and they paid for my trip, and that's why I'm here. Okay. So, I guess what I would say is, in the spirit of this, kind of in leaving, do try this at home. Oh, I want to tell you one interesting thing about this, is that this title of my talk, Do Try This at Home, this is a talk I've been giving for several years, and I had no idea that was the name of this conference. So I think that is pretty interesting. So what I would suggest that you do is just find, how's my hair? So I would say, find what it is that actually turns you on, and, indulge that passion, try some stuff, and do try this at home. Thank you very much.